Do you use this whole same process for your Alcatraz novels?
No, my Alcatraz novels are free written books, and so let's talk about other methods of building stories. Now, I believe I mentioned the Kevin J. Anderson method, which is the start and write out a really detailed description of your book, and then you take that and you take it one step and you put it into viewpoint, and then you take that and you take it one step further and do a more detailed outline, and then finally you write the scenes where you take each kind of paragraph and say this is a scene and write your book. I've never tried that method before, but I do know many authors who use it. The method I use for the Alcatraz books is I say is somewhat like, you guys seen that show Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah.
It's like Whose Line Is It Anyway? With the Alcatraz books, my goal with the books is, number one, they're only one viewpoint books. Number of viewpoints you're going to use magnifies the complexity of your book many-fold, all right? For new writers, I suggest try and stick to 2 or 3 viewpoints maximum. If you're writing a YA book, do 1 or 2, okay? If you're doing epic fantasy, maybe let yourself have 4, but remember something like, The Wheel of Time. Big, massive, epic scope. The first book was halfway through before it added a second viewpoint. Because the complexity of the world is so big that adding a lot of different viewpoints right off the bat can just make things explode for you. So as an early writer, I once said, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to use 12 main characters, and they're all going to have their own cool plots and be doing different things. The book was a disaster, okay? So that's a little aside. The idea here is that if, I don't want to say don't be ambitious, because you want to be ambitious, but if you think about it this way, and I will get to the answer to this, how to do Alcatraz books, but if you think of it this way, you think of, let's say your writing skill is right here, on some arbitrary scale. This is where you are. And if you shoot for a book that's like right here in your skill level, the book is going to turn out, how's it going to turn out whether if you shoot for one like this? And let's say you were going to write these 2 hypothetical books. This one turns out just wonderfully, even though it's smaller in scope, and this one turns into a train wreck. This one is going to be a better book, even though you may look at that and say, oh, but it's less ambitious, it's less complex. Well, sometimes taking the thing that's just challenging you enough to make it really interesting, yet not so grand in scope that it's going to train wreck, can actually step your skill level up a bit. It's like saying, let's say that you weigh 120 pounds, you're like, I'm going to go fight in the heavyweight division because that's where the real champions are. Well, no, it's, you can, there are fantastic books of small scope. Pride and Prejudice is a very small scope book. It's a wonderful novel, okay? There's, you don't look at Pride and Prejudice and say, well, yes, but, it doesn't have the cast that something like Game of Thrones has. They're doing completely different things. And so it's not, even though, the number of viewpoints might make this one more ambitious, this one is an equally good or better book, in my opinion, because of what it's trying to achieve and how well it achieves it. And so saying, I'm not saying don't be ambitious, but I am saying sometimes it's best to try and look and say, I'm going to write a really great book at this level ambition rather than write a mediocre book at this level ambition until I get better. I say that because of personal experience. This helped me become a better writer when I kind of stepped it up. The books that I tried at this level of ambition when I was a newer writer really turned out to be horrible, and I didn't learn as much as the books like Elantris, which Elantris is a smaller scope ambition book than something like Way of Kings. And yet there are plenty of people that like Elantris more because ambition is not the only thing that makes a good book. It's only one factor of many that can make for a good book. All right? So keep that in mind. So with Alcatraz, only having one viewpoint means that I don't have to worry about the detailed plot outline as much because, our scale of complexity is going to remain relatively simple. One direct plot line it's going to be sequential and chronological. We're not going to do time jumps and things like that, which add a lot of complexity. And I'm going to kind of only have 2 or 3 set-piece scenes, meaning we're going to be in this location, and then this location, and then maybe this location. So what that allows me to do is to do some, to write the books much more free-form for me. So what I do with them is I sit down and I say, okay, I'm going to give myself the grab bag brainstorming session. I'm going to take just a couple of days. I'm going to brainstorm just wacky, screwy, interesting things that make me laugh. Sorry about that. You've been warned. That make me laugh, and then I am going to try and write a book where they all make sense. Okay? So I'll sit down and say, okay, we're going to come up with new smedgery talents. If you haven't read the books, these are books about people who have their magical powers or stupid things that that people do. Like, one person's magically good at arriving late to appointments, and another person's magically good at tripping, stuff like that. I'm going to brainstorm cool lenses. Lenses, they have magical glasses that do cool things. And then I'm going to come up with random elements. Kind of like, in Whose Line, they'll draw it and say, okay, tell a story using a tangerine and, a wet noodle. This is what I'll do. Be like, okay, talking dinosaurs. And a bad guy made of little pieces of metal. And, I'll just, all of these random things, I'll end up taking about 2/3 of them, saying, okay, I've got to tell a story with all of these elements that feels cohesive, it makes sense. Go! Oh, and it has to be funny. And then I'll just go, chapter by chapter, and see and try and get these things all in and hit all these points by the end of the story. It's a real fun writing method. It creates for a lot of spontaneity, but it also is very silly. So it's most suited to a middle grade type book. The reason for that being, the older we get, the more we want our silliness and our seriousness separated, it seems to be. While as a middle grade kid will read an action adventure book with a lot of silliness and still enjoy it as a serious book. It's harder to pull that off unless you're Terry Pratchett for adults. It really is. And that's why you end up with something more like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is really crazy, but really does not have anything in the way of compelling characters or a compelling plot. It's just humor. In saying just humor, I mean, it's brilliant. It's great humor, but it is just humor. It's not doing a lot of things. Pratchett somehow manages to take it and have a good plot and some decent characters and the humor together. He's the only one I've read that can do that. But anyway, if that's your bag, then go for it. But remember, for adults, generally, humor is not random elements mixed together the way it is for kids. Taking, if I write in an Alcatraz book, my penguins are on fire, they laugh. They're like, why do you have penguins and why are they on fire? That's hilarious. That's not generally going to be as funny for adults. Adults are going to be looking for wordplays or dramatic irony or these types of humor that are not as well suited to this kind of random brainstorming thing I do for Alcatraz. Okay? So, question for you guys. Have you used other methods of kind of generating a story and getting started that I haven't talked about? If so, tell me about them, and let's talk about them with the class. I'll give you a gummy bear. Yeah.
I once had a friend who was trying to encourage me to write, and so she said, "Why don't you tell me a story?"
Touch gummy bears.
It was on Facebook. She said, "Why don't you tell me a story?" So I just told her a story, and then she was like, "Oh, tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more."
Okay. Yeah.
So it was basically a free write, but it was because I had an audience.
Right.
I knew when she was excited what would bore her and stuff.
Okay, considering audience. That can be very useful. I just talked about that a little with the Alcatraz books. And we will talk about the different genre divisions. In fact, maybe we'll talk about that today, because that is kind of on my list of things to talk about. But yeah, considering audience. What else do we got? I'm going to throw your gummy bear at this hand that I didn't cough on.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
How I wrote just the one novel, for some reason it was Christmas Eve, and I just thought of this really engaging dialogue, and I said, I have to write this down.
Okay.
And then I just started asking those questions going back with the plot, basically. Well, what brought them to this point?
And
I just kept going. And I wrote a novel out of that.
Awesome. I once challenged followers of me on Twitter to do a dialogue exercise, which is very fun, which is they try to write a story with 3 or more characters in which you use no dialogue tags. A scene, not really a story. In which you use no dialogue tags, but which you differentiate each character by the way they speak. And that could be, if you're having trouble starting, a good way to go. Say, I'm gonna come up with 3 characters. I'm going to come up with different ways that they talk. Not necessarily dialect. Dialects, dialect, yes, but not like Cockney accent dialect that you write on the page. Not Mark Twain type dialect, but more, this person favors compound sentences, or this person always uses, Robert Jordan does this, fishing metaphors. It's a woman from a fishing background, and even though she's like one of the most powerful women and most cultured women now, she always uses fishing metaphors, and it's great because she'll start using these complex fishing metaphors that no fisherman would ever come up with, but they're still about chopping off the fish head as being a metaphor for and so that's a great way to characterize someone just through dialogue. And you could do something like this, build your characters so they each have a different way of talking. Maybe one of them uses very direct, blunt speech, and the other one always tries to talk around things and placate everybody. Building a dialogue exercise that way. What else you guys used? Yes, right here.
I usually come up with the character first and then decide what's wrong with them and figure out how they're going to fix that.
Excellent. Woo, that was awful. Sorry about that throw. Okay, what's wrong with them? How to fix it? That's a great way. One of the tools I've seen people use that I like is also the what does the character want most, and why can't they have it?
Let's see. One I use not very often, but just kind of making my dreams make a little bit more sense.
Okay, dreams. Sure, works fine. Yes.
I have younger siblings who are quite a bit younger than me,
and
they like to draw funny pictures, and I'll just say, "What is that? What does it do? Where does it go?
Okay.
How does it work?" And by the time we're done, we've written a short story together.
Excellent. Was there one back here?
I was actually going along the same lines with the.
Just give him a bear coming at you.
Like that amplifies creativity quite a bit.
Sorry, I missed it. What was it?
I was actually just going along with what he had said
yeah.
about a dream journal.
Yeah, dream journals are great. Okay, right here, and then over here, and then we'll go on to something else.
I actually, one of the things that happened to me recently was, oh dear.
You're fine. It's under your feet. You'll get it in a minute.
So I had recently a original character idea from a dream, and fortunately, I forgot 99% of the plot in the dream, so I could just rewrite everything.
Dream journals are good, though. Dream journals are useful. All right, who was the last person? You were the last person.
I'm just the one the novel I'm writing it now for this class. I was listening to some music and I wanted to put a story to it.
Oh, okay. That's excellent. In fact, I do that a lot. When on my points on the map thing, my big, powerful scenes are often come from listening to music while I'm working out and devising something to go there. Okay, I'm going to eat this one because it's red, and you're getting the orange one. Sorry. I'm the teacher. I can do that.